Scott Cooper, welcome to FYC at Contenders in Focus
Thank
Live.
you, John.
Great to see you.
Yeah, man, you too, always.
You were here because people like your movie. Critics liked it. It was well received.
Oh, that's nice to hear, yeah.
Do you know when you're making a movie if it's going to be good?
Boy, that's a good question. Well, I generally...
Not that any of your movies suck, but I'm just saying, do you have a sense of like...
I always feel like, that I'm capturing what I set out to.
Okay.
Feels like it's the movie I set out to make. Feels like I'm getting the performances that I want. And you never know how, of course, how it comes together in the cutting room. But in terms of awards or film criticism, no two people experience a work of art the same way. Music, looking at a sculpture, a painting, certainly film. So once you make it and you put it out into the world, it becomes a whole different thing. And the better films, or the best films, are the ones that over years, their greatness is realized. It happens for me when I see other people's work. Films that maybe came out with either minor acclaim or were completely overlooked, and that I know on a first viewing, my God, this is an incredible piece of work. And it's only over time that you realize, wow, that's a masterpiece. I think people always strive to find something that engages an audience, which is, of course, incredibly difficult to do today, getting people off the sofa into the theater, unless it's a prequel or a sequel. But in terms of making the movies, I always feel like this is the movie I set out to make. Mm-hmm. Now, whether people are going to respond to it, that's something you can never control. I know Jeff Bridges said to me the night before the Oscars, my first movie was nominated, of course.
Talking about Crazy Heart?
Yep, several people on my movie won Oscars. Jeff said, tomorrow, none of that matters. What matters was the journey getting to this point, Scott. Of course, Jeff won.
Award's kind of nice, yeah. Yes. I think his trophy's kind of nice, but yes. I get it.
But I've always remembered that it's really about, did I execute what I set out to execute? Did the movie touch people? Did it move people? And I've found throughout the course of my career, thankfully, that it always connects with some people. Maybe not everybody, but certainly you hear from those that it does connect with.
I recently did a story about your film for my radio show, NPR's 1A, and a listener called in and told this story, and I'm quoting it now. What was most revelatory was my wife's response. She's not as big a Springsteen fan as I am, and is not as familiar with the story of Nebraska and Bruce's depression. And she was really impressed with Bruce's frankness about that time in his life, particularly the positive male relationships in the film. It reminded us of Ted Lasso, how people were open and compassionate and vulnerable with each other and willing to seek help, which I think is an important message these days, unquote. Maybe you didn't imagine you would get a Ted Lasso comparison.
I did not, no.
But do you allow or imagine yourself to think you can generate that kind of conversation when you're making a movie? Because to me, what she said validates the whole purpose of the film.
Well, yeah. When you're making a film about an icon, in this case, Bruce Springsteen, people come to it, whether it's her husband, who is a rabid Bruce fan, and she's a casual fan, or whether it's people who expect from the genre a certain type of film. Well, this film is really not what people expect. It's not Bruce Springsteen making Born in the USA or Born to Run, or is it Bruce Springsteen at the height, right? This is about a man who is making a record, which is essentially a personal reckoning with his childhood trauma and undiagnosed mental illness. And it's also a film about his most stark album. So I'm very touched that she said that, because it's not a film of generally what people expect. And they have expectations, and maybe if the film doesn't meet those expectations, they leave unsatisfied. Or, like this particular caller, it illuminates a part of their life that she didn't expect it would, because I can say this, John, now that the movie has debuted at Telluride and the New York Film Festival in London, and I've taken it all around Europe, and now I've been to a lot of Q&As. Sadly, I'm here to report that having a challenging childhood is much more universal and prevalent than I thought. And after every screening, countless people come to me and say, Scott, my father never told me he loved me. My father never told me he was proud of me. I too never sat on my father's lap. My father never told me he loved me and never was going to before he died. Or, Scott, thank God, Bruce had the courage to seek therapy, which saved his life. All these sort of things that when I'm writing the screenplay and then making the film, I had no idea was going to affect people this way. And it's every screening, John. And I'm so thankful. And it's because it's the power of cinema. It's also Bruce Springsteen having the courage to allow me to tell this story, to allow this particular story, probably the only film that will ever be made about his life. And it's not what you expect from a music film. It's not even a biopic. It's a very short chapter in his life. So I'm really touched when I hear stories like that.
I broke through the trees and there in the night my father's house stood shining hard and bright. The branches and brambles tore my clothes and scratched my arm. But I ran till I fell and shaking in his arms.
You mentioned people talking about their parents. Your dad died just before you started work on this film.
The day before I started.
The day before you started filming. When you think about your relationship with your father and his death, did it change or kind of validate the idea behind this movie? Because that's not only an incredibly traumatic thing to go through, but also you're about to tell a story about
Fathers
a
and
father-son relationship that isn't good.
Yeah, well, I can't speak for everyone, but I think we all have challenging relationships with our parents. As a parent, I see that with my own children, and I do know that my father probably came from the same sort of male masculinity ethos as Bruce's father, which is to say, we don't talk about our problems. We keep all those inside. We don't seek the type of therapeutic help that probably would change the course of their life. They don't give voice to their pain. They don't know how to. And everything seems to be just withheld in a way that affects everybody in their life. So, in that way, I think it certainly validates some of the childhood that I knew. I just didn't realize it was as universal and prevalent as it is, sadly. And I feel like parents try to parent their children in differing ways than their parents parented themselves. I know that my wife and I do, and probably to a detrimental effect of being too hovering or not allowing them to fail as much as our parents allowed us to, who were more, submarine parents, right? Who were lurking and surface when needed.
But the thing you're also talking about is shame, and the shame of saying that I don't feel well, or there's something wrong with me, or if I break my finger, I go to a doctor and get it fixed. If I have mental illness, that's not only is it not something I go see a doctor for, it's not fixable. I'm not going to talk about it. So you're talking about parenting, and in the case of this film, people don't even have not only are they ashamed of it, they don't have the language.
No.
It doesn't exist.
No, and it's and mental illness,
right,
and getting help. There's a stigma associated with that because I can handle this, right? That's that generation. I mean, Bruce has even been very public in saying that he has parented his children very differently than he was parented because of that. But yeah, there's a lot of shame. There's a stoicism that comes with a certain generation that I think is incredibly detrimental. When you make a rock music film, these aren't often the things that people take out of them, and I'm incredibly happy that they have. It makes it a harder sell, John, and probably, quite frankly, disappoints some people that it isn't the Born in the USA story. But that's okay, Bruce has seen the movie 13 times now, and loves it more each time. So that's good enough for me.
When you make a film about an artist, I think it's probably inevitable that you either see a little bit of yourself in that artist, or at least start thinking about yourself and your own approach to art because of what that other person is doing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what you learned about your own art by looking at someone else's.
Well, when you look at what Bruce Springsteen did, he's coming off a succession of hit albums with hit songs. He's selling out arenas. And what does he do? He defies expectations. Instead of continuing with the E Street Band, he writes his most personal and painful, and I think enduring album, Nebraska. As a filmmaker, of course, not to the same degree, when your first movie, in my case, Crazy Heart, comes out and people seem to really like that movie, wins a few Oscars, I was offered countless music films. Elvis, Chet Baker, Miles Davis, Grateful Dead, I mean, many. And I, people whom I love, I said no to all of those. And I went and I made an incredibly personal but searing drama with Christian Bale and Casey Affleck called Out of the Furnace. And tonally was completely different than Crazy Heart in almost every way. What I learned from that experience and what I've learned from Bruce is always follow your creative instincts. You're always battling commercial risk and commercial success, obviously. That's what helps when you have someone like John Landau, Bruce's manager, who shields Bruce from that and allows Bruce to make the exact album he wants to make. Of course, 2 years later, Born in the USA would come out and sell 30 albums. So they don't know this, 30 million albums, they don't know this at the point. So what I've learned from that is follow your creative instincts, surround yourself with people who will protect that, because making films is very different than making an album in your bedroom. It takes a crew of 200. So I've learned to follow those instincts, surround yourself with people who will help you achieve that, and everything else is left up to the gods.
You should know. No singles, no tour, no press.
No, really?
No joke. He's not even putting his face on the album cover.
What?
Nothing.
You're being serious. This is not going to be good for either one of us.
I'm not asking for your understanding, and I'm not here to explain Bruce's thinking or justify his artistic choices. I am here to make sure the album is released precisely the way he wants. That's it.
Yeah.
Okay? Whether or not you believe in this particular album, in this office, my office, we believe in Bruce Springsteen.
Nebraska is the only album that Bruce Springsteen cared enough about to ask his agent how it was selling.
That's right.
He knew he had done what he wanted to do, but he wanted to know it was received. When you think about how you measure success, there's so many metrics. You can talk about, your Rotten Tomatoes score, your box office, awards. What is the test for you where you say to yourself, I did what I set out to do from this external validation? Or, as Bruce was able to do, are you able to mostly shut off that test and do it internally?
Both Robert Duvall and Jeff Bridges said to me, never read reviews of your movies. And these two have been in some of the best movies ever made. I never pay attention to Rotten Tomatoes. What I pay attention to is the people that I've made the film with, how they feel about how the film turned out, the experience I have with audiences who see my films at film festivals or Q&A sessions. That's the barometer, because it was Stanley Kubrick, whose movies when they came out, almost all of them were incredibly divisive, who said, all of my films have had various critical opinions. It's the subsequent critical reaction that settles the score. What I pay attention to is, what did Bruce Springsteen and John Landau think of this movie? There was a great artist who shall remain nameless, who came to me after seeing a Western I made called Hostiles. And he said, Scott, it reminds me just of, in my world with art, he said, when people see a good piece of art, as soon as they see it, they're like, wow. And then over time, they're like, But with great art, it's, And then over time, it's, wow. He said, that's what you want to make.
Last question. You spent a lot of time talking about your last movie and you're probably chomping at the bit to make your next movie. Is that the blessing and the curse that you're very busy talking about your movie, but also at a certain point you want to get back to work?
Yeah, I mean, you do. You look, when you make a movie about Bruce Springsteen, who's incredibly culturally relevant, I'm very close with Bruce. The movie means so much to Bruce. He loves the film. I love the film. I really love taking it around. It's invigorating being on this campaign.
Scott, so good to see you.
Yeah, you too, John. Thanks, man.